hosting this event. So we're super excited that you're here to join us. This is a very important topic for you as high school counselors and the students. So we want to make sure we can best support you to then best support your students. Know that we will never have all the answers, but we hope that you can leave with some confidence and some reassurance that most universities, if not all universities, are here to support you. My name is Christina Dominguez. I work for the University of Arizona. I live and work in Houston, Texas, and I'm gonna let my colleagues introduce them, and then Diana's gonna take the reins and help us with this.
Okay, my name is Diana Trim, and I'm the regional admissions representative for Texas from the University of Tampa.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michelle Miller, and I work with the University of St. Thomas here in Houston, Texas.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ricky Alarcon, and I'm with Loyola University in New Orleans. I cover the whole state of Texas, and I live in Plano, Texas.
Okay, y'all. I'm going to just speak just generally, and then each one of us will tell you what our university is doing specifically about financial aid and scholarships. For COVID, really, there isn't a whole lot of difference that I can give you for in general, because many universities are doing different things. But basically what students have to do, they must fill out FAFSA, because even if it's not for federal aid, because sometimes students think, well, I don't qualify for federal aid. You just don't know. And then also many universities use FAFSA to determine if a student qualifies for institutional aid. So it's very important that they do have FAFSA on file. And I know that, say they're filling out FAFSA for 2020, then they're using 2018 income. They still have to use that, but what the student will need to do, if there is a change in income or there's some type of hardship, they go to that individual financial aid office or counselor and report that. So basically there has to be 4 consecutive months where the income is interrupted. And then there's paperwork that they fill out for that school. They don't go and submit a different FAFSA, because with FAFSA, they still using that same income. So even things like loss of income, and it might be due to COVID or losing a job, a parent losing a job. It could be because of divorce. Maybe at the time that they filled out FAFSA, both parents were listed on the income, but then when during the divorce is only one parent. It could be situations where even with students with the parents paying for elementary or secondary education could be a determining factor. Or a natural disaster, but they must fill out FAFSA. Even with some schools that use the CSS profile, again, you still reporting it to that individual school. So everybody is going to be different, because not all universities are doing the same thing. So even in the spring, for the students that were already enrolled at universities, and there was money given to the universities under the CARES Act, that money was for the students who were already enrolled. And again, those students didn't receive any funds unless they had filled out FAFSA. So it's very important that they do that. Now, as far as this goes back to like test optional. all of us have different requirements for that too, and you have to be very careful. And I know there's another session on test optional, so I'm not gonna really talk about that. I'm only gonna talk about it in relationship to scholarships and financial aid. So for some universities, if they're test optional, then it only applies to admissions and it doesn't apply to scholarships. So the student would have to do their homework and make sure that they don't need a test score, SAT or ACT, in order to qualify for scholarships. Whereas with other universities, when they say they're test optional, it applies to admissions as well as with financial aid. So I'm just going to give you what the University of Tampa is doing. So for the University of Tampa, we are test optional for 21-22 school year. And so we are not using SAT or ACT scores to determine admissions. So they will not, if a student submits the scores or if they don't, it will not affect their admissions. And it does not affect scholarships, because with us, merit scholarships are determined at the time of admissions. And so in the past, we use 50% GPA, 50% test score to determine whether or not a student, what scholarship, merit scholarship the student would get. So now we just use the GPA. And so based on the high school GPA at the time that they're admitted, then that will determine the merit scholarship that they receive. And the same is true for other scholarships within the university, different departmental scholarships. Now with merit scholarships, they do not have to fill out a separate application, but with departmental scholarships and some of the other scholarships, they do. And so again, they're using GPA. But is this the case for all universities? No. So students will have to be diligent in asking questions, talking to their financial aid counselors and talking to their admissions counselors to find out what are the policies for that individual institution. Okay, so I'm just gonna pass it on to the next person, Christina.
Oh, I got a shout out. Thank you.
Yes.
So kind of to very briefly sum up what Diana said, because there was a lot of information to take and you're getting a lot of information from this event. There is only so much you can do. We are so grateful as high school counselors that you're willing to participate in these sessions, to learn more about these sessions, to best support your students. But we also know that we don't expect you to know everything, and we don't expect you to leave this breakout session being experts in the field. That is our responsibility. So know that we are always a resource for you and your students wherever their challenges may be. So there's a lot of reasons why students don't attend college. So kind of briefly talking about some of those reasons, right? They're first generation, so none of their family has attended college before, so they don't know where to start, or they don't know how to choose a college. But one of the primary factors is they can't afford it. So scholarships and financial aid are so important, and so important in this time frame specifically because of what the world is experiencing and what our economy is experiencing. So we know that our students and our family, their income is affected. And so since they are being affected, how can we help them with their financial aid? Okay, so one of those ways we can help them is reaching out to your point of contact. So again, if you have a point of contact for that university, reaching out, financial aid is a great way to go. And we could also point you in that direction of the financial aid office if for whatever reason it becomes a little bit too detailed for us. But FAFSA, submitting that application, yes, it deals with the prior year, but we still have to have that on file. And students do have the option to submit supporting documentation to support that their income is not an accurate reflection of what's being presented on FAFSA. The process is pretty tedious with financial aid. So no students, the moment they open up that FAFSA application and they start that FAFSA application and they know their income has changed, they need to make sure that they're modifying those changes as soon as possible. Because for the University of Arizona, if a student were to submit a change of income form, it takes about 4 to 8 weeks for us to view that appeal that you submitted to then determine what fast route we should go. So I know that there's probably going to be similar timeframes for the universities that are present in here. So the best advice that we can give you moving forward is making sure that the student submits their FAFSA when it opens. FAFSA opens October 1st, and then also communicating with Office of Financial Aid to submit the supporting documentation to then appeal that income if their income has been effective. And as Diana said, it doesn't have to be COVID related. There are other things that impact your income. So we want to make sure we're best supporting our students, and the Office of Financial Aid and your recruiter is going to be who you're reaching out to, because we do not expect you to know everything. I will pass it on to Michelle.
Yay, now I got a shout out. Yeah, so just to really echo what my colleagues here have shared with you, I think if anything, one of the biggest takeaways and biggest messages to share with our students this year is to take initiative. If they didn't before, if they didn't start early in prior years, to start early and to not be afraid to not only reach out, but to follow up with us and with financial aid counselors. Obviously, with professional reviews for financial aid and having to provide this additional documentation, the process is going to be more detailed and more time consuming for each student. So it's important to prepare our students and prime them to again, take that initiative and not be afraid to check in and follow up and really over communicate with their counselors and with their financial aid representatives. Another point that I wanted to make, so I'm not just completely repeating everything, is also encouraging our students to ask about additional resources that might not be exactly money, right? So what other resources is each university providing for them during these difficult times, or as future incoming students to our institutions? For example, at the University of St. Thomas, yes, we did give out some additional institutional aid for those who qualified for it. And yes, we did go through some of these professional reviews for financial aid, but we also really tried to promote our counseling resources, some of the small groups that were available for students that were preparing to enter in the fall. Also Chromebooks were given to, so actual technology was given to our incoming class, and vouchers for Wi-Fi. So yeah, so just wanted to touch on that and for you to also encourage your students to go beyond aid and more of those resources and those supports that they can get during the pandemic and beyond. I will now pass it on to Ricky.
Yes, hello, welcome everyone. Again, for our institution, we're a very small private liberal arts institution with about 3,000 students. So very echo the same sentiments as my colleagues here, definitely work with our financial aid office. One thing that we did differently was that when we work with students, I think Diane mentioned, usually it's like a 4 months impact in your income. Usually it's like they want to see like a lag time of 4 to 5 months. Some places have 6 months. And so what we did is our admissions office and our financial aid office work together to, we do appeals. So appeals, you'll see that very common with private schools. So, and what that did was opened opportunity to where students and parents can put those that paperwork in, that's saying, hey, you know, COVID really affected us. This, and we saw this with the students that were coming in for fall 2020. You know, it impacted us, you know, in April or, you know, June, July. And so they didn't have that time frame to kind of show what the broader effect was, but we were still able to help them. And it was a case by case basis. Of course, we asked for documentation. So again, just to reiterate, you know, that communication is very, very important. But that's all I would add. Again, is there's never inconvenience on, you know, to reach out to us and stuff like that.
Perfect. And we have about just 2 minutes with you. That time went by fast when you're having fun. So there was a question in the chat that I want to make sure that we're getting to, which is equally important, that says, how are universities going to give out merit scholarships without SAT or ACT tests? Diana, do you want to take it away and we can do a roundabout again?
Okay, for the University of Tampa, we agreed and came up with a policy that we would only look at the students' GPA in order to determine merit scholarship. And it is the unweighted GPA. So it's on a 4.0 scale. So starting at around 3.0 to 4.0, it's for incoming freshmen is $4,000 to $18,000 per year. So at the lower end, it'll be $4,000, and then a student with a 4.0, of course, we get the $18,000 per year. Also, we for students who've taken like AP, IB, or dual enrollment courses, then they can get an additional scholarship based on the number of courses that they've taken and the grades that they have made in those courses. So that's how the University of Tampa determined how merit scholarships would be awarded.
I'm just going to take everything that Diana said, switch it with my university and say that is the same thing. So we are looking at core unweighted GPA on a 4.0 scale. So if students are not on a 4.0 scale, we will reevaluate it, recalculate it to be on that 4.0 scale. But that's how we're looking at scholarships due to this time, right? Fall 2020, we know test dates are limited, seating is limited due to physical distancing and those social distancing requirements. So we are just looking at GPA, which is really nice for students that may not have the ability to test.
Yeah, at the University of St. Thomas, very similar. The primary route is going to be test optional. However, for us, if a student is able to test for whatever reason, even if they've already been reviewed and admitted, they can go back and we can make changes if they decide to submit test scores, which could potentially increase their scholarship amount. But by default, we're going to do the test optional 3.0 and a 4.0 as well.
So at Loyola New Orleans, we are what they consider test blind. So we will not look at test scores for either admissions and scholarships. We will not, again, to help the students, take the burden off them to find a location, find a date that's not canceled, and so forth. So we decided to do that for this year. It's going to get revisited at the end of the academic year to kind of see if we will continue that. But I think that's one thing that we try to do, again, to make it easier for the students. And as I mentioned earlier, as my colleagues, we're going to look more at that GPA, the kind of coursework the student has taken, extracurricular. So that's going to be part of not only the admissions process, but our scholarships, which are merit-based. So they will start anywhere from 11,000 until they go up to 24,000 a year.
Perfect. So for all those, I see our participant number counting for all those that are joining us. Thank you for joining us. We are concluding this first session. I want to give the ability for the participants that were in here to go out to their next session. We are going to give it about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Yes, I am complicated like that. 1 minute and 30 seconds to allow those